Marla Gibbons was already leaning forward across the hearing table when it happened. Her manicured fingers curled like she was holding herself back by pure will. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering just enough to make the room feel smaller. My wife, Leah, 8 months pregnant and still somehow calmer than me, held her testimony papers close to her chest. I could see her knuckles whitening. I could hear my own heartbeat over the stale air. "You think you can just come in here and accuse us?" Marla snapped, her voice high and metallic. "You think pregnancy gets you sympathy points?" I took one step forward. "Back off, Marla." She didn't. She surged. Her chair screeched across the tile as she lunged over the table, fingers slashing through the air. Her palm smacked the stack of documents out of Leah's hands, scattering them like startled birds across the floor. Leah gasped and stepped back, one arm instinctively covering her stomach. "Hey!" I shouted, but it happened fast. The bailiff moved faster. He caught Marla mid-lunge, one arm sweeping around her torso. She shrieked as he pressed her down onto the defendant table in a firm, controlled hold. Not violent, not excessive, just enough to stop her from reaching my wife again. Papers fluttered under his boots. "You're done," the bailiff growled in a low voice. Marla fought against the hold, her cheek pressed against the polished wood, rage trembling through her like she was plugged into a live wire. "She's lying! They're both lying!" Leah stood frozen, her breathing shallow. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder, or maybe that was just the blood rushing in my ears. My fists were clenched so tight they hurt. Every person in the hearing room, neighbors, volunteers, and the board, sat dead silent. Then Daniel Reyes, our neighbor, stood halfway from his seat. His eyes darted between us and Marla, jaw tight, clearly horrified. But he didn't say a word, not yet. "Sir, step back," the bailiff warned me. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, voice shaking. "Not while she's still screaming at my wife." Leah knelt slowly, picking up the papers with trembling fingers. A few had footprints on them. She didn't say anything, just smoothed the edges with her palms like she could erase what had just happened. The room stayed silent long enough for everyone to hear Marla's breathing, sharp, angry, almost feral. The bailiff finally pulled her upright and held her by the elbow as she spat curses under her breath. "You people are unbelievable," she hissed, glaring at us through smeared mascara. I wanted to shout. I wanted to tear into her, but all I could do was look at Leah, who gave me a tiny nod, telling me she was okay, telling me not to lose it. And somehow, that hurt worse than the attack itself. So, let me ask you something. What would you do if a person with authority tried to intimidate your family in front of an entire community? Because trust me, this was only the beginning. If you want the full story, hit subscribe, because everything that happened next was worse. Let me back up and tell you how this started. I didn't move into Silver Birch Crossing for peace or cul-de-sacs or HOA newsletters. I moved there because Leah loved the place. She loved the old dead birch tree at the center of the neighborhood, the one locals insisted had been preserved for history. To her, it represented resilience, something once alive, now standing as a reminder. To me, it just meant the houses were too close together. But I tried. After leaving the Army Corps of Engineers and starting life as a structural engineer, I wanted stability. I wanted a place to build something permanent. Leah wanted a quiet home to raise our first child. Our new place seemed perfect. Small porch, sturdy roof lines, enough yard for a garden she swore she'd maintain even pregnant. Then came the first notice. Improper structural modification. That's what they called the reinforced railing I installed, so Leah could balance better walking up the steps. Then came the second and the third. Every one of them signed by Marla Gibbons, HOA Vice President. At first, I thought it was overzealous rule-keeping, happens everywhere. But then the timing got suspicious. Every time Leah stepped outside, Marla appeared. Clipboard tucked to her chest, wide smile that never touched her eyes. "You really should have asked before making changes," she'd say. Or, "We have procedures in Silver Birch Crossing. Some people respect them." Daniel, our neighbor, would always hover somewhere nearby, pretending to check his mail or water his plants. He'd give us a tight smile, friendly but scared, like he knew something and didn't want to choose a side. It didn't take long before I realized something bigger was going on, something that had nothing to do with railings or procedures, something I was determined to uncover. Daniel didn't say anything that first week, not when the notices started stacking up, Not when Marla kept circling our house like she was waiting for a mistake. He always hovered at the edges, like a man standing too close to a fire he didn't want to admit was burning him too. I didn't know yet just how tangled he was in the board's mess. All I knew was that every time I saw him, he carried that same tight, apologetic smile. The morning after the hearing blow-up, I stood on my porch holding a cup of coffee gone cold, staring at the dead birch tree in the center cul-de-sac. Its bark peeled in long strips, pale and brittle like old paper. The HOA loved calling it heritage. To me, it looked like a warning. Leah shuffled outside, wrapped in a sweater too big for her. "You didn't sleep," she murmured. "Neither did you." She shrugged. "Baby kicked a lot." We both knew that wasn't why. Before either of us could say more, a familiar voice cleared his throat. Daniel stood at the end of our walkway, hands shoved deep in his hoodie pockets. His son, Mateo, played in the grass nearby, rolling a toy truck through the dew. "Morning," Daniel said quietly. "Morning," I replied, waiting. He looked like a man bracing for impact. He scratched his beard. "Look, about yesterday." "You don't have to explain," I said. "You didn't cause it." "No," he said, eyes flicking to Leah. But I didn't stop it either. Leah gave him a soft smile. "It's okay, Daniel." He exhaled, relief mixed with guilt. "Marla's edge has gotten worse lately. She's under a lot of pressure with the board elections coming up. She's been pushing everything hard, violations, citations, all of it." "That doesn't excuse what she did," I said. "Of course not," he said quickly. "But I'm telling you so you know. It's not personal. She's just lashing out everywhere." I didn't believe that for a second, but I let him talk. He shifted his weight. "Look, Ethan, just tread lightly for a bit. It'll calm down." I raised an eyebrow. "Has it ever calmed down?" He hesitated, his whole posture tightening, breath catching in his throat. His eyes dropped to the pavement. "No, not really." That told me everything. Before I could press further, a sharp clicking sound echoed down the sidewalk. Marla, clipboard tucked to her ribs like a cherished relic. She strode toward us with a purposeful, self-righteous rhythm, heels tapping like a metronome of irritation. Daniel stiffened instantly, shoulders rising, head ducking, his entire demeanor shrinking like he wanted to fold himself into his hoodie. That was new. And telling. "Well," Marla said as she reached us, "looks like everyone's awake and ready for a productive morning." Leah's hand tightened on my arm. I forced my voice to stay level. "What do you want, Marla?" She smiled sweetly. "Just delivering notices." She handed me a folded sheet with a flourish. I didn't even have to open it to know it was garbage. "Your garbage bins were visible from the street last night," she declared. "They were at the curb on pickup night," I said. "Procedure states they must be removed within 30 minutes of collection. That's not a real rule." "Oh," she crooned, "it is now. Board approved it this morning." Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked like he wanted to speak, but kept his eyes trained firmly on the sidewalk. His son tugged his sleeve, confused. I stepped toward Marla. "You can't just invent regulations because you're angry?" Her smile sharpened. "I can't enforce any measure necessary to maintain community standards." "By harassing my family?" She tilted her head. "Your wife caused a disruption yesterday. Just remember that we're watching for further incidents." Leah inhaled sharply. I felt something inside me snap, but before I could respond, Daniel stepped forward. Not much, but enough to surprise all of us. "Marla," he said softly, "maybe give them a day. Yesterday was a lot." Her eyes sliced toward him. "Daniel, dear, unless you're volunteering for the compliance committee, I suggest you keep your opinions to yourself." He shrank again, shoulders curling inward, silence reclaiming him. She turned and walked away, satisfied, clipboard swinging like a gavel. When she disappeared around the corner, I exhaled hard. "Daniel," I said, "what does she have over you?" He swallowed, looked away. "It's complicated." "Complicated how?" He shook his head. "I can't, not now." A shadow crossed his face. Fear, shame, I couldn't tell. But it was real and deep. He called for Mateo and walked off quickly, leaving Leah and me on the porch with another notice in hand. Leah whispered, "He knows something." I nodded. "Yeah, and whatever it is, it's big." The dead birch tree stood across from us, brittle branches reaching toward nothing, like it was warning us again. This wasn't a series of petty violations. It was a pattern, and patterns meant purpose. Daniel avoided me for 2 days after that morning on the porch. Not openly, he still waved stiffly if we crossed paths, but he kept conversations short, eyes always darting toward the cul-de-sac, like he expected Marla to materialize out of thin air. I didn't push yet. Pressing a frightened man only makes him shut tighter. Instead, I watched, listened, waited. On the third evening, I found a new notice taped to our door. Not in the mailbox, taped. A bright orange paper screaming immediate action required in capital letters. Leah was inside resting, so I tore it down quietly and unfolded it under the porch light. Non-compliant structural railing, it declared. Unsafe modification, removal within 48 hours. I laughed under my breath. Of course. I'd built that railing myself, sturdy, reinforced, code perfect. I could have hung an engine block off it, but this wasn't about safety. It never had been. The porch light flickered overhead. Somewhere across the cul-de-sac, a dog barked. The dead birch tree cast long, skeletal shadows toward the street. Then I heard footsteps. Daniel approached slowly, hands shoved in his pockets, shoulders tight. The look of a man fighting with himself. "You got another one?" he asked without preamble. I held up the notice. "Want to guess what code I violated this time?" He breathed out hard, a humorless laugh. "Let me guess. Railings need ornamental tops now." "Wouldn't put it past her." He rocked on his heels, thinking. The wind brushed through the brittle branches of the birch tree, making them rattle like bones. Finally he spoke, voice low. "Ethan, you need to be careful. She's building a case." I frowned. A case for what? He hesitated again, his whole body telegraphing the war inside him. For a forced compliance hearing, maybe even property liens if she pushes hard enough. I crossed my arms. "That's insane." "Yeah," he murmured, eyes shifting toward his house. "But she's done it before." My stomach tightened. "To who?" "Family on Birch Bend Lane, single mom with 2 kids. They left in a hurry." "Because of violations?" "No," he said, voice dropping. "Because she threatened them with fines they couldn't pay. Fines she invented." I stared at him. He didn't flinch. "And the board letter?" I asked. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Most of them don't fight her. She keeps the meetings short and the pressure high. And people are scared to push back. Look, she has the president wrapped around her finger, and the treasurer owes her after she helped him with a zoning issue last year." "Daniel," I said quietly, "why are you telling me this now?" He swallowed. "Because it's happening again, and because your wife—" His voice cracked slightly. He steadied it quickly. "People are watching. They think you two are stirring things up. We're just trying to live here." "I know," he whispered. "I know." From across the cul-de-sac, headlights swept over us as a car turned the corner. Marla's SUV, black, predictably spotless. She slowed when she saw us talking, but didn't stop. Her window rolled down just enough for her to glare. "Good evening, gentlemen," she called with syrupy venom. Daniel stiffened so hard he looked like he might snap. He nodded quickly. "Evening, Marla." "Another violation addressed, I assume?" she asked me. I met her gaze. "Not addressed, received." "Well," she said with a brittle smile, "be sure to handle it promptly. We wouldn't want safety concerns to escalate." She drove off slowly, deliberately, letting the threat hang in the air like fog. Daniel exhaled shakily after she disappeared. "See, this is what I mean. She's pushing you." I turned back to him. "Daniel, if you know something, really know something, I need to hear it." He opened his mouth, closed it, looked toward his house again, where Mateo's bike lay on its side in the driveway. Then he whispered, "It's not just violations. She's hiding something with the treasurer. Numbers aren't adding up, and she's using the new property assessments to cover it." My chest tightened. "How do you know?" He shook his head. "I can't say more, not yet." "Why not?" His voice trembled. "Because if she finds out I talked, she'll come after me next." The fear in his eyes was real, deep, rooted, old, and it hit me then that Marla's power wasn't just procedural, it was psychological. "We're not letting her do this to anyone else," I said. Daniel looked at me like he wanted to believe it, needed to, but couldn't. And then, without another word, he walked back to his house, leaving me under the porch light with the notice in my hand and this dead birch watching over everything like a silent judge. One thing was clear. Marla wasn't just enforcing rules. She was protecting something she was willing to destroy families to keep buried. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. Couldn't help it. My mind kept replaying Daniel's words. Numbers aren't adding up. As a structural engineer, patterns mattered to me. They told stories, exposed flaws, revealed hidden stress points that could topple an entire system. And Marla's behavior had a pattern, a bad one. Leah was still asleep, resting on her side with a hand over her stomach. I kissed her forehead quietly, grabbed my jacket, and headed outside. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet pavement. The dead birch tree stood in the cul-de-sac, its branches stiff and skeletal, reaching toward the paling sky like a warning. I wasn't going to wait for another violation. I needed to see what Marla was doing, why she was escalating so aggressively. And as much as I hated the idea, I needed to attend the HOA's morning compliance walkthrough, where Marla often strutted around wielding her clipboard like a badge. I spotted her and the HOA treasurer, Mark Ellison, near the community entrance. He was a small man with watery eyes and an anxious gait, the kind of guy who avoided confrontation on principle. He looked like he always expected to be blamed for something. They didn't see me yet, so I moved closer, staying behind a parked SUV just long enough to hear their tones, her sharp and commanding, his nervous and resigned. "Telling you, Mark," Marla said, "we need that money shifted before the audit. If anyone questions the invoices, we're done." I froze. Mark's voice quivered. "I'm trying, but the contractor numbers aren't lining up. They'll notice missing funds." "No," Marla said, low and forceful. "They'll notice what you let them notice. Get it done." My pulse kicked up. Professional expertise or not, anyone with functioning math skills could hear the implication. Misappropriation. Fraud. I stepped around the SUV. "What invoices?" I asked. Marla flinched, something she rarely did. Mark nearly dropped his folder. "You," she snapped, masking the panic quickly, "are not authorized to be here." "Public area," I said calmly. "You're discussing community finances in public, and loudly." Mark swallowed hard. It's not what you think." "Then tell me," I said. He looked at Marla, then back at me, then back at Marla again, like a trapped animal. She tightened her grip on her clipboard. "Leave, Ethan," she said. "Now. I just want to understand why you're rewriting rules, threatening my family, and pressuring the treasurer to change numbers." Mark visibly paled. Marla took one step toward me, voice cold. "You're overstepping. And you're hiding something." Her eyes narrowed. "Go home before you make things worse for yourself." "For myself," I echoed. "Or for you." The tension thickened until it felt like the whole neighborhood had its breath held. That's when Daniel appeared at the corner, hood up, hands in pockets, watching like he hadn't planned to be there, but couldn't ignore what he was seeing. His expression was tight, conflicted, his jaw working like he wanted to speak, but couldn't yet find the courage. Marla glanced at him. I saw her shoulders stiffen. "Daniel," she said sharply, "don't get involved." He froze. I turned to him. "Is this what you meant? The numbers that don't add up?" His eyes flicked to Marla, then to Mark, then to me. His lips parted, barely, but no words came out. His silence said enough. Marla stepped between us. "He doesn't owe you anything." "No," I said. "Or are you afraid he'll confirm what you're doing?" Mark suddenly stuffed the folder into his bag, mumbling, I have to go," and scurried away like he feared being caught in the open. Marla shot him a glare but didn't chase him. Instead, she turned back to me. "Keep pushing, Ethan. See where it gets you." She walked off with fierce steps, heels clacking against the pavement like a countdown. When she disappeared, Daniel finally approached, slowly, shoulders drawn inward. "You shouldn't have confronted her like that," he whispered. "She's committing fraud." He winced. I can't confirm anything." "But you know," I said. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. "It's not that simple." "Daniel," I said softly, trying to break through whatever fear held him. "If she's stealing from the community, people deserve to know. You deserve to live in a place where you're not afraid." He rubbed his face with both hands, exhaling shakily. "You don't get it. She helped me with something a while back, something I shouldn't have needed help with, and now she uses it against me." Blackmail. That clicked everything into place. The hesitation, the fear, the shrinking every time she spoke. "What did she hold over you?" I asked gently. He shook his head. "Can't say. Not yet." But this time, unlike before, his eyes didn't look away. They held mine, desperate, conflicted, reaching. "Just be careful, Ethan," he whispered. "She's capable of more than you think." He walked off before I could respond, shoulders hunched, hands deep in his pockets. The dead birch tree rustled behind me, brittle branches tapping against one another, sounding almost like bones warning of a collapse. But I wasn't stepping back anymore. If Marla was hiding financial rot, I was going to expose it, using the one thing she couldn't twist or manipulate, the truth hidden in the math. I spent the rest of that day replaying the conversation with Marla and Mark, dissecting every word, every twitch, every slip. Numbers don't lie, but people do, especially when money is involved. If the HOA finances were crooked, there would be a trail somewhere, and if there was a trail, I could follow it, not with hacking or snooping, just with professional eyes trained to see structural weakness, even when it's hidden behind fresh paint. That evening, after Leah went to bed early with back pain, I sat at the dining table with my laptop and the HOA bylaws open beside me. They were dense, intentionally confusing, full of vague language about financial discretion and emergency allocation authority. But somewhere buried in the legal jargon, there had to be an answer. I combed through meeting minutes, public records, and contractor invoices posted online. The more I looked, the more the pattern emerged, just like Daniel said. Repeated maintenance projects billed to the same contractor, all signed off by Mark. But the amounts fluctuated unpredictably. One month, a fence repair cost $300. The next month, the exact same fence cost $2,800. Then $1,100, then $3,200. That wasn't poor budgeting. That was concealment. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. The kitchen clock ticked steadily, its soft rhythm filling the quiet house. Outside, the dead birch rustled faintly in the wind. I could see its silhouette through the window, branches thin and crooked like fingers pointing somewhere I hadn't looked yet. I was still staring at the numbers when I heard a gentle knock. Soft, hesitant. Daniel. When I opened the door, he stood on the porch with his hoodie up, hands stuffed in the pockets, eyes darting around like someone might be watching. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, stepping aside. He didn't come in. Instead, he stood just inside the doorway, shifting from foot to foot. "Mateo's asleep," he murmured. "I can't stay long." "You shouldn't be here at all if you're scared she'll see you," I said. He shook his head. "I'm not scared for me." That made me pause. "Then who?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he nodded toward the table where my laptop still glowed. "You're looking into the invoices," he said. "You knew I would." He exhaled heavily. "Ethan, if you dig deep enough, you're going to find things people don't want found." "That's the point." He swallowed hard, voice trembling. "You don't understand her reach." "Then help me understand." He stepped farther into the house, lowering his hood. Under the warm dining light, he looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, stubble grown in unevenly, like he hadn't slept in days. "Marla isn't just bending rules," he said. "She's controlling who gets contracts. She funnels work to people she knows, people who owe her favors. They inflate invoices, split the difference, and she covers it with new compliance fees." My jaw tightened. "So she's stealing from everyone." He nodded slowly. "And if you expose her, she'll come after you harder. Then she already has." "She attacked my wife in a hearing room," I said sharply. "I'm not backing down." He closed his eyes for a moment, pained. "There's more." Silence stretched between us. "Then tell me," I said softly. He shook his head. "I can't. Not without proof. If I say it out loud, she'll drag me through the mud. She'll use what she has on me, and I can't lose my house. Mateo needs stability." I softened my voice. "What did she hold over you?" His eyes glistened, not tears, just pressure. "A mistake, a stupid one. Years ago. She found out because she She reads people's applications more closely than she should. Blackmail again, standard for someone like her. Daniel, I said gently, you don't have to confess anything tonight. But if you know where to look, if you know what she's hiding, help me find it. He hesitated, shoulders rising, falling, rising again. Then he whispered, check the vendor lists from last quarter, especially the emergency maintenance ones. I frowned. Why those? Because they never happened, he said. Not one of them. That hit like a punch of clarity. So, the invoices, I murmured. Fake, he said. Or padded, or both. We both fell silent. After a moment, Daniel stepped back toward the door. I shouldn't be here, but, Ethan, be careful. If she catches you doing what you're doing, she won't stop at violations. Then what will she stop at? I asked. He hesitated at the doorway. The porch light framed him in a faint glow, highlighting the fear tugging at his jaw. She'll try to break you, he said quietly. Same way she broke everyone else. He pulled up his hood and walked into the night, shoulders hunched against more than just the cold. I looked back at the glowing invoices on my laptop. Marla was bleeding this community dry, and now I had a place to start digging. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, the numbers from the vendor lists flickered behind them like ghostly reminders, repeating patterns, inflated charges, maintenance tasks that never occurred. And Daniel's voice echoed through all of it. None of those emergency maintenance projects ever happened. By sunrise, I was already at the dining table with a fresh pot of coffee and a spreadsheet I'd built from scratch. If Marla was siphoning money, her weak point wouldn't be in the lies. It would be in the math. And math was where I lived. I cross-referenced dates, vendor names, street locations, and contractor licenses. It didn't take long to see the shape of the scheme. The same vendor, Northcrest Property Solutions, was listed on half the emergency invoices. According to online records, they were an active contractor, but their license number wasn't in the state database. Fake, probably a shell, maybe even something Mark created under pressure. I was so deep in sorting the data that I didn't hear Leah shuffle into the kitchen. She placed a hand on my shoulder, warm and steady. You've been up all night, she murmured. I'm fine, I said, though my voice sounded rough even to me. She traced a fingertip along the spreadsheet columns. You're doing this to protect us. To protect everyone, I corrected. Marla isn't just abusing authority. She's bleeding this neighborhood dry. Leah sighed softly, rubbing her lower back. Just be careful. She's cornered now. Cornered people lash out. I stood, poured her a glass of water, and kissed the top of her head. I know, but I'm not walking away now. Before she could respond, a rapid knock rattled the front door. 3 short taps, followed by 2 slower ones. Not urgent, not panicked, just deliberate. I opened the door to find Mark Ellison, the treasurer, standing on our porch looking like he hadn't slept in a week. His shirt was wrinkled, tie loosened, hair sticking up like he'd run his hands through it too many times. Mark, I said cautiously. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, shutting the door behind him. I need to talk, now. Leah drifted to the living room, giving us space but staying within earshot. Mark looked around anxiously. Did Daniel talk to you? I kept my expression neutral. About what? He swallowed. About the invoices. Maybe, I said. Why? He started pacing. It's not my fault, you know. I didn't create the mess. I'm just trying to keep things from falling apart. You're the treasurer, I said calmly. If things are falling apart, you would know. I know too much, he whispered. He stopped pacing and pressed a shaking hand over his eyes. Look, Ethan, I'm not a bad guy. I got overwhelmed. Marla promised she'd help me with an old zoning violation I had. She said she'd make it disappear if I approved a few projects. A few? I asked. He winced. It grew. I didn't expect it to get so big. And now she's demanding more and more, and I can't keep hiding it. Not from the audit, not from the homeowners. Leah spoke from the living room. Then come clean. Mark let out a small, desperate laugh. I can't. If I confess, I'll lose my job. Maybe worse. And she'll deny everything. She'll say I falsified the reports. She'll make me the fall guy. I stepped closer. Is that why you came here? To warn me or to ask for help? He looked at me with pained eyes. Both. I folded my arms. Then tell me what you know. Everything. His gaze flicked toward the window, as if he expected Marla to be standing there. Only the dead birch tree waited outside, stark against the pale morning sky. I can't give you documents, he said. She checks everything I print, everything I email. He tugged at his tie. But I can tell you where to look. The vendor lists are just the beginning. What's next? I asked. He lowered his voice. Check the maintenance logs for common areas, especially the birch courtyard. Leah frowned. Why there? Mark whispered. Because there was never any work done there. None. Not in the last 5 years. But the invoices claim thousands. My pulse quickened. So, the birch courtyard is the biggest hole in the budget. He nodded shakily. And if homeowners see the numbers, she'll blame me. She'll say I fabricated them. You need to expose the inconsistencies without pointing to me as your source. I glanced at Leah. She nodded. This aligned with what Daniel had hinted. Mark, I said, we're going to uncover this. But we're not letting her destroy you to do it. His eyes glistened, not with relief, but with fear. Ethan, she'll find out. She always finds out. He backed toward the door. Be careful. Don't let her catch you looking where you shouldn't. Because if she realizes you're close, his voice dropped to a whisper, she'll burn your life down. He hurried out, leaving the door slightly ajar. A gust of cold air swept inside. I closed it, locking it firmly. Leah placed her hand on mine. So, what now? I looked at the spreadsheet, the vendor lists, the financials. Now, I said, I checked the courtyard logs. Because if Marla had left cracks in her financial foundation, I was going to find every one of them. I headed to the birch courtyard just after noon, when most of the neighborhood was at work and Marla was typically busy terrorizing someone at the clubhouse. Leah insisted on coming with me, but I convinced her to rest. The courtyard wasn't far, just a 30-second walk from our porch, but today it felt like crossing a threshold into something deeper. The dead birch tree stood at the center, its trunk gnarled, bark peeling in pale sheets. The small benches around it were sun-bleached and splintering. The ground beneath them was cracked, uneven. No sign whatsoever of the extensive paving repairs listed in the invoices. I crouched and touched the ground. The soil was cold, dry, undisturbed. 5 years of maintenance should have left a trace. This had none. You're getting close. Daniel's voice came from behind me. I stood and turned. He hovered near the path entrance, hood half raised, hands shoved in his pockets. His eyes looked more tired than usual, like he hadn't slept since the night he knocked on my door. I figured you might show up, I said. He gave a hollow laugh. You're not easy to ignore. The wind shifted, rattling the dead branches above us. Daniel flinched at the sound, then stepped closer. You're right about the courtyard, he said quietly. No work's been done here, not ever. But the invoices say otherwise. How long have you known? He hesitated, then sank onto the nearest bench. A while. Too long. I tried to pretend it wasn't happening. Didn't want to get involved. But you are involved, I said gently. You've been living under her thumb. He nodded slowly. Marla thinks she's untouchable, and she is, unless someone can prove where the money actually went. I sat beside him, not too close, just enough to show I wasn't here to pressure him. Daniel, I said softly, what's really going on? You don't have to hold it alone anymore. He ran a hand over his face, exhaling shakily. You're not going to like the answer. Try me. He looked up at the dead birch tree as if it might offer courage. Mark wasn't the first treasurer she leaned on. Before him, there was a woman, Sandra Liss. She resigned suddenly 3 years ago, said she had family issues, but that wasn't it. I waited. She found financial discrepancies, Daniel said. She confronted Marla. Next week she was gone, and Marla told everyone the treasurer had misappropriated funds. He swallowed. Sandra moved out of the neighborhood 2 months later. Ran, I murmured. He nodded. And everyone believed Marla because she controls the narrative. She scares people into silence. She tells them, let me handle it, and they do. Why didn't you speak up back then? His face tightened. Because she had leverage on me already. He paused. A late mortgage payment. A warning from the city about an old shed my previous landlord never removed. Things that weren't criminal, but looked bad on paper. She threatened to report me if I didn't cooperate. My stomach twisted. Daniel, I didn't know what else to do, he whispered. Mateo was little. I was still figuring out how to be a single dad. I couldn't risk losing the house. He stared at the ground, voice trembling. I feel sick about it, every day. I shifted closer, lowering my tone. You're here now. That matters. He looked up, eyes shining. Not tears, just pressure. I want to help, but you have to promise me something. Name it. You can't let her know it came from me. If she finds out I talked, he shook his head. I've seen what she does to people who threaten her power. I won't reveal you, I said. You have my word. Daniel took a slow breath, gathering whatever courage he'd stored away all these years. Then he leaned in slightly. The vendor lists are only the surface, he whispered. She's hiding something bigger, something she doesn't want anyone to see. Look at the HOA's reserve fund, the money that's supposed to be saved for emergencies. What about it? It's almost empty, he said. But she's been reporting it as full for years. I stared at him. You're sure? Yes? Do you know where the money went? He nodded once, barely perceptible. I think she's funneling it into a private account. But I've never seen the proof, only hints. Little inconsistencies she tries to cover with new rules, new fees, new compliance violations. She masks the holes with noise. My pulse quickened. And the treasurer? He's terrified, Daniel said. He wants out, but she won't let him. And now that you're looking, she's watching you. Closely. I exhaled. So she's manipulating finances, intimidating neighbors, blackmailing board members, and falsifying reports. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. And she'll destroy anyone who threatens to expose it. The wind blew harder, rustling the dead branches overhead. I looked at the courtyard, the cracks, the soil, the peeling bark. Everything here screamed neglect. And now I knew why. Daniel, I said, thank you. He stood slowly, pulling his hood back up. This isn't bravery, he said quietly. It's guilt. It's courage, I corrected. You're helping more than you know. He paused, then nodded once. And this time, when he walked away, he didn't look over his shoulder. I watched him go, then looked back at the courtyard, at the cracks hiding the truth beneath. It was time to expose the rot, all of it. The day after Daniel revealed the truth about the reserve fund, I woke with a plan forming in my head, a real one. Not anger, not instinct, a professional strategy. If Marla's power came from fear and confusion, mine would come from clarity, precision, proof, the kind she couldn't twist or bury. I spent the morning gathering everything I'd compiled, the inconsistent invoices, the non-existent contractor license, the discrepancies in the Birch Courtyard maintenance logs, and the reserve fund reports. But raw data wasn't enough. I needed a pattern, a structural pathway revealing the collapse she'd tried to hide. I needed the audit trail. By noon, I headed to the clubhouse. Leah wanted to come, but I refused. Marla hated her more than she hated me. And if this got tense, I needed to control the room, not worry about my pregnant wife being targeted again. The clubhouse was empty except for one person, Mark, sitting behind the reception counter, tapping nervously on a binder. His eyes widened when he saw me. You can't be here, he hissed. I'm a homeowner. I can be anywhere inside the clubhouse. He looked toward the hallway leading to the board office, then lowered his voice. She's in a bad mood today. She knows something's off. She's been tearing through paperwork all morning. Good, I said. Let her panic. Mark shook his head, pacing. You don't get it. When she panics, she gets cruel. This isn't a game to her. Neither is theft, he winced. If she hears you say that, she will, I said. Soon enough? Mark rubbed his forehead like he wished he could erase the whole situation. What do you want? I set down my binder. Access to the audit prep logs. He froze. Absolutely not. Homeowners have the right to review quarterly financial summaries, I countered. It's in the bylaws. This isn't the summary, he whispered. These are the raw prep materials. Exactly, I said. I need the raw numbers. His hands trembled, the binder shaking between them. If she finds out I let you even see those logs, I'm done. You're already done, I said gently. She's just waiting for the right time to throw you under the bus. He flinched. I lowered my voice. Mark, You came to me. You asked for help. Let me help." He hesitated, eyes darting, breath shallow. Then he whispered, 10 minutes. That's all I can risk." He led me into the small board office. The space smelled like stale air and scented wipes. The blinds were half drawn, casting striped shadows across the desk. Files were stacked everywhere, sloppy, frantic, like someone had been searching through them in anger. Probably Marla. Mark opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a thick binder labeled Audit, Prep Materials. He set it in front of me. "You didn't get this from me." "Understood." I opened the binder, my breath hitched, page after page of handwritten edits, erasures, overwritten numbers, amounts crossed out and rewritten. Not once or twice, dozens of times. The reserve fund balance had been changed repeatedly, always upward. Someone was painting the illusion of stability. "This is fraud," I whispered. Mark swallowed. "It's survival." "For her," I corrected. "Not you." He didn't respond. Then I turned to the vendor section and froze. Northcrest Property Solutions wasn't the only fake vendor. There were 3 others, all with similar patterns, all tied to inflated repair claims. And every single invoice was countersigned by Mark and approved by Marla. Mark saw my expression. "You understand now why she can't let this get out." "Because it's systematic," I murmured. "Not sloppy, intentional." As I traced the altered figures with my finger, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, heels tapping like a countdown. Mark's face drained of color. "She's coming." I closed the binder instantly. The office door swung open. Marla stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp enough to cut steel. "Well," she said, her voice dripping venom, "isn't this cozy?" Mark straightened so quickly he nearly dropped his pen. "Marla, this isn't... he was just..." "Save it," she snapped, her gaze locked onto me. "You're digging, Ethan." "Homeowners have rights," I said evenly. "You're a troublemaker with a hero complex. And you're a vice president with something to hide." Her lips curved into a cold smile. "You think you're smart. You think you can piece together numbers and play detective." She stepped closer. "But you're in over your head. And when this blows up, it'll take you with it." Mark stood frozen. I leaned forward, slightly. "If there's nothing to hide, then why are you so afraid of me looking?" Her jaw clenched, for the first time I saw it clearly. Not power, fear. "I'm warning you," she whispered. "Walk away." I met her stare without blinking. "Not a chance." Her eyes flashed with something dark. "Then you've made a very big mistake." She turned sharply and strode out, heels slicing against the tile. Mark slumped into the chair, trembling. She knows you're close." "Good," I said, lifting the binder, "because I'm done playing her game." He stared at me, voice shaking. "What are you going to do?" I closed the binder with a decisive thud. "Expose the structure," I said, "piece by piece." I didn't go straight home after leaving the clubhouse. I walked the long way around the neighborhood, circling past the cul-de-sac, past the cracked sidewalks, past the dead birch tree whose branches clawed the gray sky. My mind was racing, not with fear, but with structure, with strategy. Marla believed fear controlled people. She wasn't wrong. She'd built her entire power base on it, but fear collapses under pressure when the truth is revealed in the right sequence. And now I had the blueprint. The invoices, the fake vendors, the reserve fund discrepancies, the audit logs. All that remained was building the case and choosing the moment to strike. By the time I reached my driveway, I had the start of a plan, not a confrontation, not yet. A controlled pressure test, something that would force cracks into her story without tipping her off to how much I knew. Leah was waiting at the door the moment I stepped inside. "You're late," she said, worry tightening her voice. "Ran into complications," I murmured, kissing her cheek. "But good ones." Her eyes softened. "You got something, didn't you?" "More than something." Before I could explain, there was another knock. 3 quick taps, Daniel's signal. I opened the door to find him standing there with his hood down, breathing fast, eyes darting like he'd run the whole way. "You need to come with me," he said urgently. Leah touched my arm. "Ethan!" "I'll be right back," I assured her. Daniel led me down the street, away from the houses and toward the walking path behind the retention pond. The wind rippled the water, sending small waves across the surface. He kept looking over his shoulder until we reached the wooden footbridge. Only then did he stop. "What happened?" I asked. He took a breath. "Mark panicked. After you left, she cornered him. Asked what you were doing in the office. He told her you were looking for financial summaries. He didn't mention the audit logs, but she didn't buy it," I finished. He nodded, jaw clenched. "She's calling an emergency board session tonight. Closed session, my guess. She's going to rewrite something, maybe change protocols, maybe destroy documents." Exactly what I feared. I leaned on the railing, staring at the pond. "Then we need to apply pressure before she does." Daniel shifted uneasily. "What kind of pressure?" "A community meeting," I said. "Not an official HOA meeting, a homeowner gathering, open to everyone. We present the data. We show the inconsistencies. We force the board to respond in public." Daniel hesitated. "If you do that, she'll explode. That's the point." He pushed his hands through his hair. "This is escalating too fast." "It has to," I said, "before she buries the evidence." Daniel leaned on the railing beside me. "You're sure this is the way?" I looked at him, steady. "Marla controls the board. The only counterweight is the community." He exhaled shakily. "You're saying use the community to expose her?" "Exactly, and you're going to help me." He stiffened. "Ethan, no, I can't be involved in a public meeting. She'll know I talked." "You won't speak," I said. "You won't stand next to me, you won't be identified, but I need you to do one thing." "What?" "Invite people." His eyes widened. "I can't—" "Quietly," I said. "Privately. You know who's frustrated, who's been targeted, who's scared. They'll come if it's not official." Daniel swallowed. "You're playing with fire. We're putting a spotlight where she can't control it." He looked out over the pond, jaw working as he thought. Finally he spoke. "I know at least 8 families who'd show up, maybe more." "Good," I said. "But Ethan, if she finds out—" "She won't. Not until she walks into a room full of homeowners who finally stop being afraid of her." Daniel let out a trembling breath. "Then I'll do it." We walked back toward the houses, less hurried now. But before we parted, he grabbed my arm. "Ethan, if this goes wrong, it won't." He looked deeply at me, like he was searching for cracks I didn't have the luxury of showing. "Don't underestimate her. She'll fight dirty." "I'm counting on it." He nodded slowly and walked away. When I reached my porch again, Leah opened the door before I could knock. She'd been watching from the window. "You're planning something," she said, not a question. "Yes," I said. "A homeowner meeting, not HOA sanctioned." "Good," she said, surprising me. "People need to see what she is." I stepped inside, pulled out the binder, and set it on the table. "I need to organize all of this into a clear presentation by tonight." Leah eased herself into a chair. "I'll help. You should rest." She smiled tiredly. "I'm pregnant, not helpless." I sat down beside her. "This could get messy." "Then let's make it undeniable," she said. As we worked, the dead birch tree cast its long shadow across the window, stretching further as the sun dipped. Tonight, the homeowners would see the truth. And once the truth was out, Marla wouldn't be able to hide anywhere. By dusk, everything was ready. The spreadsheets, the printed charts Leah had helped format, the simplified breakdowns of the reserve fund discrepancies, the vendor list irregularities, and photographs I'd taken of the unmaintained birch courtyard. I wasn't planning a dramatic reveal. I was planning a structural one, layered truths, sequential, impossible to ignore. The homeowner meeting was set in the community green space beside the cul-de-sac, just far enough from the clubhouse that Marla couldn't claim it was an unauthorized use of HOA property. People began arriving quietly, almost furtively, carrying folding chairs and worn expressions. A few glanced around like they expected Marla to appear behind them. Daniel lingered at the back, hood up, hands buried in his pockets. He never moved closer than 10 feet, but he made eye contact with me once, a tiny nod that said, "They came." By the time I stepped forward, nearly 20 households were gathered. A few kids played under the dead birch tree, kicking pebbles across the cracked ground. The sun was setting behind the houses, streaking orange across the sky like a warning flare. I cleared my throat. "Thank you for coming," I know this wasn't easy. A murmur rippled through the group. A woman near the front spoke softly. "We're tired, Ethan. Someone had to do something." I nodded. "Then let's start." I unrolled the first chart on the portable easel, a simple graph showing maintenance spending over the last 3 years. The spikes were obvious, artificial. "This," I said, "is what the HOA claims it spent on emergency maintenance for the Birch courtyard." I pointed toward the dead tree behind us, the cracked soil, the splintered benches. "Now, look at the actual condition." People murmured, heads shook. A man raised his hand. "I've lived here 6 years. Nobody's touched this courtyard." "Exactly," I said. "The invoices say thousands were spent, but there's no record of work done, no contractor permits, and the listed vendor doesn't exist in the state directory." Another homeowner asked, "So where did the money go?" "That's what we're here to figure out," I said. I flipped to the next chart, vendor lists cross-referenced over time. These companies appear on dozens of invoices, but 3 are shells. Their license numbers don't match anything in the system. Gasps, whispers. Leah stepped forward to help hold the next sheet. A breakdown of reserve fund changes. She was pale from standing too long, but determined. "This," she said, tapping the page, "is our reserve fund. The HOA reports show it full, but the audit prep materials say otherwise." I stepped beside her, and the numbers have been rewritten multiple times. A woman in a cardigan pressed a hand to her mouth. "So, the vice. President, she's stealing?" "I'm not assigning guilt yet," I said, "but the data points to financial manipulation." Someone shouted from the back, "If it's not her, then who? We know Mark's scared to death of her." Daniel tensed but didn't move. I took a breath. "I don't want speculation. I want facts. And these facts show structural inconsistencies that can't be explained away." A tall homeowner crossed his arms. "So what's the plan? We can't confront her without proof." "We have proof," I said, lifting the binder. "Tonight was about showing it to you. Tomorrow is about presenting it to the state regulatory board." That sent a ripple through the crowd, fear mixed with hope. Then I heard it. Heels, rapid, sharp, angry. Marla. She stormed down the sidewalk with her clipboard like a shield, eyes blazing, lips pulled tight. She didn't slow. She marched straight into the center of the group and pointed at me. "This is an unauthorized gathering," she shouted. "All of you are in violation of HOA policy." People stepped back, but not far. They stayed. Marla's gaze darted to the charts, the binder, the faces watching her. "What do you think you're doing?" she spat. I met her stare calmly. "Presenting information to homeowners." "You're spreading lies." "Then you won't mind disproving them," I said. "Here, in front of everyone." The air tensed like a drawn bowstring. Homeowners looked at her, really looked at her, waiting for an answer. She faltered, just for a moment, because fear had weight, and hers was starting to crack the veneer she hid behind. "You have no right," she said, voice trembling. "You're a public official of this association," I replied, "and we have the right to ask questions." "No," she snapped. "No, you don't. This ends now." She lunged toward the binder, but before she could grab it, another hand shot out. "Daniels!" He stepped forward, not much, just 3 feet, but enough to stop her cold, enough for the homeowners to see him, enough for Marla to realize her grip on him was slipping. "Marla," he said, voice steady for the first time. "Stop." Her face drained of color. "You," she whispered. "Yes," he said quietly. "Me." The courtyard fell silent, and for the first time since I'd moved into Silver Birch Crossing, Marla lost control of the room. For a full 3 seconds, nobody breathed. Even the wind seemed to pause, leaving the dead birch tree standing in eerie stillness behind us. Marla stared at Daniel like she was seeing a ghost, like he wasn't supposed to exist outside the tight corners she'd kept him boxed in for years. Daniel didn't shrink this time. He didn't duck his head or step back. He stood in the open, in front of everyone, hands trembling slightly, but steady enough to matter. "You're making a mistake," Marla hissed. "Think about your son." A gasp rippled through the crowd. The threat was too bare, too obvious. Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's exactly what I'm doing." Her nostrils flared. "You owe me, Daniel." "No," he said, voice breaking but determined. "I don't. Not anymore." I stepped forward, not between them, beside him. "Marla, The community deserves answers. What community? She snapped, gesturing at the group. These people don't care about the work I've done. They don't understand what it takes to keep a place like this running. What it takes, I echoed. Or what it takes from us. A murmur of agreement rose, quiet but undeniable. Marla's grip on her clipboard tightened. You think you've caught me? With charts, scribbles, misinterpreted paperwork? I can walk into any court and explain this away. Then do it here, I said, in front of the homeowners you claim to protect. Her eyes darted across the faces surrounding her. Not one lowered their gaze, not even Mark, who had inched toward the back of the gathering, pale but present. You want to accuse me? She said, voice rising. Fine, but you're accusing all of us, the whole board, every decision we've made. No, I said, just the ones signed under your name. A woman in the crowd, a single mom named Brianna, spoke up. You fined me $300 for leaving chalk drawings on my driveway, my kids' drawings. Marla whipped toward her. That was a violation. Of what rule? Brianna demanded. Show me where that's written. It's implied. There is no implied, someone else said sharply. Another voice joined. You cited me for weeds in December. You threatened to tow my car while I was in the hospital. You screamed at my teenage daughter. You told me I'd regret challenging you. The testimonies rolled out like a dam breaking. Marla's expression shifted from outrage to panic, quick, flickering, then poorly masked behind brittle arrogance. None of that is relevant, she snapped. This is a smear campaign. You're all being manipulated. I stepped forward, binder in hand. These are numbers, facts, not opinions, not stories. You can't bully your way around them. Her lip trembled. She tried to hide it behind another glare. I've dedicated 5 years to this board. I've sacrificed. No, Daniel cut in. You've exploited. Her head snapped toward him. I helped you. You threatened me, he said, voice rising. You told me you'd get my home reassessed if I didn't back your violations. You said you'd bury me in paperwork if I ever crossed you. More gasps, more looks exchanged. Marla sputtered. I never said. You did, he said. And I'm done being afraid of you. I turned to the crowd. Tomorrow morning, I am submitting the full financial package to the state HOA regulatory board, the fake vendors, the altered reserve fund numbers, the non-existent courtyard repairs, everything. A current of energy pulsed through the homeowners, anticipation, relief, righteous anger. Marla's face twisted. You think they'll believe you? You think they'll trust a rookie homeowner over a board member? Daniel spoke before I could. They'll trust the evidence. Evidence? She barked. You mean stolen documents? They're public records, I said. Everything shown tonight is legally accessible to homeowners. Her composure snapped. You're ruining everything. No, I said softly. We're repairing what you broke. She lunged toward me, not physically violent, but desperate, reaching for the binder. But she didn't make it. Mark stepped into her path. For the first time, the treasurer who had cowered under her shadow lifted his chin and said, Marla, stop. She froze as if slapped. Mark's voice trembled, but he held firm. I'm tired of cleaning up behind you. I'm tired of taking the fall. This ends tonight. Marla stared at him, betrayed. Mark, you owe me? No, he said, voice cracking but loud enough for everyone. I don't owe you anything. The courtyard was silent except for the brittle rustle of the dead birch tree. I faced the crowd. Tomorrow, the regulatory board gets everything, but tonight, we make one decision. I gestured to Marla. Do we allow her to remain in her role until the investigation? A woman's voice called out, No! Then another. She needs to step down. More voices followed, rising together, a wave of long-delayed courage. Marla's shoulders shook, not with remorse, but fury. You're all making a mistake, she whispered. No, I said gently. We're correcting one. And for the first time since moving to Silver Birch Crossing, the community stood with me, shoulder to shoulder, against the storm she had created. The next morning dawned gray and damp, the kind of light that made Silver Birch Crossing look washed out, as if the whole neighborhood were exhaling after a long-held breath. Leah and I walked to the clubhouse together, slowly, at her pace. She steadied herself with one hand on my arm, the other resting instinctively over her belly. "You ready?" she asked softly. "I am," I said. "Are you sure you want to come?" She looked up at me, tired but unshaken. "I was there for the beginning. I'm here for the end." Inside, the clubhouse was nearly empty. Only Mark sat at a table near the back, a folder in front of him, his shoulders sagging like he'd aged 10 years overnight. When he looked up, relief and anxiety warred on his face. "Did she show?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, I don't think she's going to. After last night, she's done." I wished I could believe that, but people like Marla rarely left quietly. "I filed the report," Mark said. "Everything you compiled. Everything I had, the regulatory board already acknowledged receipt." Leah smiled faintly. "That's good." "It is," Mark said. "But there's something else?" He slid a document across the table. "The president called an emergency meeting this morning. They've removed Marla from her position pending investigation. A weight I'd been carrying for months finally loosened." "Good." "She's been barred from accessing HOA systems. Her keys deactivated. She's gone." Mark exhaled shakily. "I can't believe it." "She used you," I said gently. "She used all of us." He nodded, eyes damp. "And I let her?" Leah stepped forward. "Not anymore." He gave her a grateful smile. We were leaving when the door swung open behind us. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. Her presence struck like a cold wind. Marla. But she wasn't in heels, or a pressed blouse, or her usual armor of confidence. She wore a wrinkled sweater and jeans. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot. Her face was blotchy. Anger, exhaustion, denial, all battling beneath the surface. "Cowards!" she spat as she approached. "Every one of you." Mark flinched but didn't back away. "You think you've won?" she rasped. "You think an audit scares me? You don't understand what I did for this neighborhood." I faced her, calm, steady. "You controlled it. You didn't protect it. You have no idea what people are capable of if you don't keep a tight hand on them." "Fear isn't leadership," Leah said quietly. "It's desperation." Marla's eyes snapped to her. You're the reason he started this crusade." "No," I said. "You are." She stepped closer, trying to reclaim the dominance she had lost. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You humiliated me. And she pointed at Mark. "You betrayed me after everything I covered for you." Mark lifted his chin. "You covered for yourself. I was a shield." Something in her expression cracked, sharp and bitter. "You think the board will protect you? You think they'll see you as heroes?" She laughed, hollow and unsteady. "They'll turn on you the moment the investigation threatens them." I shook my head. "The board knows the truth now. They're cooperating, and so are the homeowners." Her jaw clenched. "You ruined my life." "No," I said quietly. "You did that." For the first time, she looked small, stripped of authority, exposed. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Just a shaky breath. She backed toward the exit, eyes darting like she was searching for a version of herself she could still defend. She found none. When she finally turned and left, the door closed behind her with a dull thud, the sound of an era ending. Mark sank into a chair. "Is it really over?" "Not completely," I said. "The investigation will take time, but her control is broken." Leah threaded her fingers through mine. "And the community can heal." I looked at both of them, the treasurer who'd found his courage, the wife who had stood through every storm, the neighbors who'd shown up despite their fear. The dead birch tree wasn't visible from inside the clubhouse, but I imagined it outside, still brittle, still damaged, but now surrounded by homeowners who finally saw its decay for what it was. "After the audit," Mark said quietly, "the board will need restructuring. People will need to step up." Leah nudged me gently. "You could help them." I laughed softly. "After all this, you want me on the board?" She smiled. "No one understands structural integrity better than you." I squeezed her hand. "Maybe. But today, I'm just grateful it's over." We stepped outside into the cool morning. The sun was finally breaking through the clouds, lighting the cul-de-sac in soft gold. The birch tree cast a longer shadow now, but it wasn't ominous, just real, honest. Silver Birch Crossing wasn't perfect, but it was ours again. And like any structure, once the rot was exposed, it could be rebuilt. As we walked home, Leah leaned her head against my shoulder. "So," she said gently, "are you going to tell this whole story someday?" I smiled. "Oh, I'll tell it. And if you want to hear the rest of what comes next, you should probably subscribe."